Hello and welcome to Thursdays on the Stoop. I'm Julian, one of Blue Stoop's co-directors. Blue Stoop is a literary arts organization serving the greater Philadelphia area. Today we have a very exciting workshop, Poetry as Pleasure, with Amir Methvin. Amir is a poet, social worker, sex educated, and aspiring sex therapist with a passion for using writing as a medium for healing and liberation. She writes about love, people, pleasure, and pretty sunsets. With a background in psychology and gender studies from Temple University, Amir has spent over 6 years facilitating poetic spaces that center joy, pleasure, and self-discovery. Their work draws on the teachings of bell hooks and Audre Lorde, with a particular focus on the intersection of pleasure, identity, and liberation. Through workshops like Poetry is Pleasure, Amir empowers participants to explore the intimate connections between body, mind, and spirit through creative writing and reflection. Thanks so much for being here. Amir, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to facilitate this workshop and share this space with you all today. I have so many things to share with you and so little time. So I'm gonna give you a little bit more of an introduction about me, bit of a rundown about what we're gonna do today, and then we'll do some really cool writing and some really cool sharing as well. So Julian did a great job introducing me. I always love/hate hearing my bio read aloud. But to just do a little bit more of an intro, yeah, I am a Black queer South African poet, writer, facilitator, sex educator, all the things that Julian mentioned and more. And about a year and a half ago, I founded an organization called Pleasure is for People. And it is a three-pronged organization where I offer sex education content delivery through social media, as well as workshop facilitation on a variety of sex ed topics like this one. But all of it, and then the third is sex ed and sex positive consulting that I offer to social service organizations that want to add a sex positive lens to the service delivery they're already doing. So I started Pleasures for People, honestly, after the first time that I read Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Maree Brown. I really believe that pleasure and sex education are tools for collective liberation, as she talks a lot about in her book. So we'll be kind of exploring that topic a little bit more today. Just some kind of like things to know about me. Also, I have a hard time seeing a lot of the time. That's why I'm wearing these big glasses. So if you say something or you like raise a hand or you say something in the chat that you want me to pay attention to that I haven't yet, please just like interrupt me. Feel free to at any point. So just wanted to like put that note out there. So yeah, so I've been a spoken word poet for a long time. I went to Temple in Philly where I was the facilitator and president of Babel Poetry Collective. So shout out to Babel. I have been, part of the Philly literary arts scene. I've now moved to New York City, where I'm facilitating spaces like this here as well. And the way that I like to frame all of my sex ed workshops and my writing workshops when I start is by talking about the fact that, everybody has approaches to these conversations about sex, about pleasure, about how to translate these things into our writing and our work. Coming to these conversations from really widely different backgrounds. And mine is that I was born and raised, like I said, in Cape Town, South Africa, to a beautiful mother who was incredibly sex positive, which is such a rarity these days. And the reason that I kind of ended up in the place I am now as someone who's really passionate about sex ed and talking about it all the time with, only a little bit of a blush when I do so, is that she, sat me down when not sat me down, but when I was like 14, 15, she started to really tell me that the best sex that I was ever going to have was with myself. And that is just such a powerful thing to tell a 14-year-old. Just first of all, she bought me my first ever vibrator. And so she really started the trajectory of me feeling comfortable enough, confident enough to engage in conversations about sex and sexuality from a sex positive lens. And so I want to offer a couple of those tools to you all today. But I like just sharing that story because it's really my like origin story. So this workshop is inspired by, like I said, pleasure activism by Adrienne Maree Brown. Usually I offer this workshop in person and I'm able to give away a couple copies. Unfortunately, I can't do that today, but I really, really encourage that folks do read this book. It's a collection of works by Adrienne Maree Brown, but also by Audre Lorde and other poets and writers and visionaries in the world of pleasure and also in the world of poetry, which is such a cool blending. And it really is focused on the concept that if we are in touch with our bodies, how to make them feel good, how to please them, then we can go on to share that knowledge with other people, be better sexual partners to ourselves and to others, be better community members, and also better writers, better able to understand our own inclinations for everything. So poetry and journaling, the way these two kind of worlds mesh for me, are really the ways that I chronicle pleasure and joy across my life, both in and outside of the bedroom. So together today, we'll explore what it means to experience pleasure in our everyday lives and how we can increase the sexual pleasure we do experience. I'll give you some fun little tools that I have for that. Then we will explore how writing is a medium to become more intimate with ourselves and with each other. And so I want to encourage you, because we have a limited time together today, I would love to hear more from all of you, but we don't have time for everyone to introduce themselves. So if you could just put in the chat the reason or like what drew you to this workshop today, I would so love reading those. I won't read them all out loud right now, but I'll read them later. And that is, yeah, gonna just, that always brings me a lot of joy. So I'd just love to hear what brought you in today and bring that to be a little bit more present for you also. But to that end, I encourage you to take notes, reach out to me afterward if you have any burning questions I didn't get to. And also just as you kind of, I hope that you have something to write with near you. As we have our discussion today, please record or notice for yourself and jot down any reactions you have, both positive, negative, anywhere in between, the flushed cheeks, the sweaty palms, all the ways that we react to conversations that make us a little bit uncomfortable, but in a good way. Write them down for yourself. Just start to chronicle, okay, this is the kind of thing. She just said the word vulva, and that just made me go a little bit like, oh my gosh. And that's like totally fair, totally fine, but just good information to know, right? As you start to think more about your relationship to your own pleasure. It's so important to like be our own information source. So like I said, I'm going to talk a lot. And so apologies for that. Usually I allow for a little bit more conversation, but I have so many things to share. And I've also had a very large coffee. So there are going to be many things I say. So Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks, the two inspirations for this workshop alongside Adrienne Maree Brown, are both prominent Black queer poets. We are sitting in Black History Month, although for me, Black History Month is every month. And they are also, we're also sitting here the day before Valentine's Day. So it's very timely, very appropriate. And in a world that feels like it's literally falling over every morning when I wake up and check the news, it is so important for me now more than ever to elevate these kind of conversations and bring to the table different types of self-care that we're not as used to talking about, but that are equally as important. Okay, I'm gonna try to stop saying all the things. So there's the kind of breakdown of how we're doing time today. We're gonna do a little bit of a free write for a second, then I'll share some information and content about sex and pleasure practices. Then we'll do some writing. We have 3 different writing prompts we're doing. And then I will do a wrap up. So if you have any questions, any sex ed questions, any poetry questions that I don't get to today, you can feel free to ask them at the end. I am very used to oh, well, a friend is having this situation, so what would you tell my friend? Feel free to use those. Feel free to ask me about your own sexual experiences, and I'll hang out for a little bit afterward if folks want to do that off of the recording. So I'd like to offer just a centering breath for us as we move into this conversation a little bit more fluidly. So I'd like to invite folks, it's just like a quick 1-2. So I promise I'm not doing a whole meditation with you, but I really believe that somatic practices are very important in connecting you to your body and to your ability to be present in this conversation. So if folks are comfortable, feel free to lower your eyelids or close your eyes fully. We're just going to do a couple of deep breaths together, and I will guide you through just a centering moment. So I invite you to inhale deeply and feel the breath moving through your body. Notice any points of tension. Are your shoulders tight? Is your jaw clenched? And as you exhale, just try to release any of those points of tension. And really, as you have your eyes closed or lowered, visualize arriving fully in this moment. We may have been at work before this. We may have been picking up kids from school. We may have been any of 50,000 places, just rolled out of bed. Just give yourself the gift of arriving fully, free of external distractions and just ready to participate in today's conversation. So we'll just do a quick cleansing breath together. So I'll ask you to breathe in and then sigh on your exhale. So we'll breathe in and then sigh out. And this usually feels a lot better because I can hear other people doing it too. But feel free to do that one more time on your own. And so breathe in and breathe out on an exhale. Great. Okay. So for our first activity, I'm going to ask you to journal, jot down, and then 2 minutes, I'm going to offer 2 things in the last week that you have done purely for your own joy or your own self-pleasure. This could be non-sexual, it could be sexual. You're just writing it down. I'm not going to ask you to share them. So just take, let's say, a minute actually. Take a minute, jot down 2 things you've done in the last week purely for your own joy or self-pleasure. If you can't think of any, instead write down what 1 or 2 things that you would like to do and why you haven't yet done them. Okay, so I'll let you know when a minute has passed. So loud. Sorry about that. Okay, that's a minute. Now just by a show of hands, you can raise your hand on camera or use the little raise hand button. Feel free to just let me know how many folks really were challenged by that. How many people felt like it was hard, had difficulty coming up with more than one thing that they have done in the last week. Seeing a little bit of nodding, any raised hands. It is a challenge, right? It is sometimes, especially in today's kind of world, yeah, really hard to prioritize our own pleasure. And so I just wanted to kind of get us started with thinking about that a little bit. And so if anybody would like to share just some thoughts, what might get in the way, or what is getting in the way for you personally? What might get in the way as just a concept? What might get in the way of us prioritizing our own pleasure? What are some thoughts we might have? Feel free to share in the chat or unmute yourself and share out loud.
Hi, I'm Kate. Parenting gets in the way of like really indulging in pleasure activities for me. I wrote down this week I did a face mask before bed, which is something I haven't done in a really long time. And it's so small, I almost felt like it wasn't what I normally would say for pleasure, but I was trying to find something. And then reading, prioritizing like reading for pleasure. Um, but ideally, yeah, I feel very far from like my first choices, you know.
Mm.
So this was a good, yeah, I liked reflecting on that.
Good. No, I love that. I think all of what you articulated is so powerful because at once it illustrates a couple different things. Like small joys, little joys can still feel really big in a world where there aren't very many of them. So small joys become big ones. Just a face mask before bed becomes, wow, I really took care of myself today. So I think that that's a really powerful thing. And also acknowledging that like childcare and parenting can feel like a big joy or a big pleasure in some moments, and then others it feels like it's what's taking you away from prioritizing yourself too. So can definitely recognize that tension there. And I see in the chat we have another thought. Chronic health challenges, absolutely. So feeling like you're not quite home in your body can feel really challenging, or just even, yeah, managing chronic pain. Absolutely. I'm seeing some community there. That's really great. Yeah. The need to be productive, the existence in a capitalist world that has you getting up every single day and insisting that you're at work 9 to 5, right? Our bodies, we're not maybe built for that. And there's no natural built-in, okay, and now here's your 10-minute masturbation break at work. That's not quite in the schedule. Although I would encourage you to add it to your own personal one, not the community work calendar. But I absolutely think, yeah, those are some really great common challenges that I feel like folks are able to share with each other too. So we'll talk a little bit more now about the importance of pleasure and prioritizing it in our lives. So throughout today, I'm gonna quote a little bit from Brown and also from Lorde. So this is a quote from Brown. She says, pleasure is not one of the spoils of capitalism. So exactly what we were talking about now. It is what our bodies, our human systems are structured for. It is the aliveness and awakening, the gratitude and humility, the joy and celebration of being miraculous. And I just love that because I think it really exemplifies how pleasure is inherent to the human experience, right? I really like to illustrate this throughout the lifespan. We are born, and the first language we learn is touch, the experience of touching ourselves and touching another person. And then you see that transition over the period of childhood where you see self-soothing behaviors show up in children, which looks like masturbation to adults, right? But actually, adults often put our own sexual kind of connotations on children's behavior, when in reality, children are exploring their bodies in an absolutely natural way and recognizing, wow, this is a way that I can calm myself down. This is a way that I can make myself feel better after crying, or just, those self-soothing behaviors, completely natural, and just an illustration of how we start to experience ourselves sensually, and then that continues through the lifespan, and often we lose that as we get older. We stop giving ourselves that little massage as we put our lotion on after the shower. We're just in such a rush to get on with the rest of the day. We don't have time for the face mask before bed because we have to go to bed so that we can get up tomorrow and we have to do the next thing. And so slowing down and recognizing where pleasure sits in that is so helpful to do. I also want to mention, as we kind of continue in this conversation, that I know and want to acknowledge that sexuality and sex or attraction, desire to engage sexually is not something that everybody experiences. And so wanting to like center that asexual folks or folks on the kind of ace spectrum may absolutely not find as much of a home in this conversation. But I want to really encourage that every time I'm talking about pleasure, I'm also including non-sexual pleasure into that conversation. So even if I'm talking about masturbation, that can also just look like giving yourself a shoulder massage, right? We can absolutely take what works and leave what doesn't from this conversation. Not everything I say will be something that resonates with you, but I hope that there are a couple things that do. So thinking about pleasure activism as a concept, right? I say that word out loud. It's a little bit hard to kind of conceptualize. What do we mean? Are we like walking down the street being like, everyone should masturbate? I am doing that, but that doesn't mean that everybody else needs to do that. So pleasure activism, as Brown states, is the work we do to reclaim our whole, happy, and satisfiable selves from the impacts, delusions, and limitations of oppression and supremacy. Pleasure activism asserts that we all need and deserve pleasure inherently, and that our social structures must reflect this. So we're doing the work here to imagine a world wherein we can exist as beings just for our own pleasure and joy, and the pleasure and joy of being in community, not for the requirement to kind of keep the wheels turning. So pleasure activism being about learning what it means to be satisfiable, to generate from within and from between us an abundance from which we can all have enough. And I think that's just so beautiful. And really, the ways that I think about pleasure as a tool for collective liberation is that, really the more marginalized in America you become, the less you have ownership over your own body, right? So there's this quote in pleasure activism that says, it's so much easier to dominate people who don't know how to access their own pleasure, because the more we know about our own bodies and our own abilities to make them feel good and to make each other feel good, and also more we know about bodily autonomy, the more that we require those rights, those sexual citizenship rights from the people around us, and from our government. And so inherently, does it make sense to advocate for sex education from a governmental perspective when that is leading to potentially a more liberated population who is a little less likely to allow for some of the things that the US government wants us to allow? So just kind of some food for thought there. But when I was saying kind of the more marginalized in America you are, some examples of that would be like your ability to alter your body, right? We're thinking about gender affirmation stuff. We're thinking about abortion here. We're thinking about access to hysterectomy. Your ability to physically move your body out of prisons, across state lines, out of the country, out of the arms of someone you don't want to be with. And then also your ability to just be a sexual being, to the ability to pleasure yourself. Here I'm thinking about size inclusivity or exclusivity, gender here also, disability, right? I know we're already talking about chronic pain and how this world is not set up to support folks who struggle with that. So Audre is quoted in the uses of the erotic is power, as saying, there is no difference for me between writing a good poem and moving into sunlight against the body of the woman I love. And so that's really what connects for me the poetry and pleasure activism pieces. So I'll walk you through a couple of my favorite suggestions and thoughts and feelings about the benefits of self-pleasure. So there are so many literal scientific benefits of masturbation or solo sex, including better sleep, more relaxation, pain relief for folks who menstruate, experiencing that pain related to periods can be relieved by solo sex or masturbation. The increase of sexual satisfaction, just knowing more about what you like and what you want, allows you to create more of that intimacy with yourself, but then also potentially gives you more tools to communicate that with other people. And then it's also just super mood boosting, right? We have these big releases of dopamine and serotonin, feel-good chemicals in our brain that really activate when we do masturbate or when we do participate in solo sex. And for a second, I'm going to talk specifically about the clitoris because she receives just so little attention. And I'm using she, her pronouns because I'm talking about, my own, but anyone and everyone could have a clitoris. So I'm absolutely focused on using gender neutral language here. But the clitoris is the only organ in the body that only has a sexual pleasure function. So is it surprising to you to know that most medical textbooks still do not include full diagrams of the internal portions of the clitoris? It is not just a little bulb on the outside of a vulva. It is a full internal organ as well. And the entire clitoris was not scientifically mapped until 1998. So thinking about the field of medicine and how many doctors you may sit in front of who were educated before 1998, who are sitting in front of you as a gynecologist or as an internal medicine practitioner, who are then advising you on your health and benefits and don't understand an inherently important part of somebody's body, right? That's just a wild concept to me every single time I say it out loud. But truly, all of the clitoris becomes erect during pleasure activities or when aroused. So it's similar to a penis. Actually, everybody kind of starts out with a clitoris-like organ, and then some develop into elongate into a penis and others do not. But the entire clitoris becomes engorged with blood because it's made of erectile tissue. So this is the kind of deepest and most overtly I'm going to be talking about organs. If in case this is like you're not a fan of this part of the conversation, it'll be over in the next 3 minutes in case you want to mute me. But you can actually massage the erectile tissue of the clitoris in a way that is not that is kind of similar to how you may do that with a penis. Because the kind of arms of the clitoris, I like to like show it like this kind of. So this is what you see externally, but these two legs or arms sit actually, if this is the vulva, they sit right inside of the vulva on your as a part of your internal organs. So you can massage the vulva like that, with deep pressure, with light pressure, and you're actually touching this erectile tissue that's sitting right inside of the vulva. So I just like to share that as a little tip for folks to continue to explore, because it's something that people don't talk about all that much. So moving on from that, I always like to give the clitoris a little bit of a headline in this workshop, but I want you to journal for a second. Write down the answer to this question for me. What are some ways that you already include pleasure practices in your life? And what are some of your favorite pleasure practices? So I'm going to talk a little bit more after the next 2 minutes about pleasure practices, both sexual and non-sexual, but think for yourself and come up with a list for yourself. What are some of your favorite pleasure practices? And what are some ways that you already include pleasure practices in your life? So I'll let you know when 2 minutes has passed. Okay, 2 minutes is up. I'm going to bring us back. So I'm going to just kind of rapid fire give you a list of some of my favorite pleasure practices that I like to suggest for folks. Again, take what works and feels good or feels curious that you're noticing some curiosity around, leave what doesn't, or at the very least, jot down, I didn't like that suggestion. Why is that? Let's think a little bit more about that. Okay, so starting with non-sexual, some pleasure practices that I love to suggest for folks. Number one is mindful eating, right? You are nourishing your body, giving it what it needs to survive and thrive. In that moment, you are taking care of yourself. And it is one of the most primal things that we do as humans outside of having sex or engaging in sexual pleasure. So encouraging yourself to, I have a friend who eats every meal with his non-dominant hand so that he can be really aware of each bite he's taking and how that feels in his body. That can be a suggestion folks explore, and I know eating can have be a really charged experience for some folks. So if that's not something you're interested in, let's keep it moving. But for folks who are, that can be a really cool thing to explore. And then I'm also a dancer. So I really like to advocate for physical movement if you're able. That can look like chair yoga. It can look like a heels class. I've really gotten more into like sensual dancing. Exploring ways to physically move your body if you have that ability. dancing, shaking, stretching, walking, just using your eyes, right? If you don't feel like moving your actual body, the rest of your body, using your eyes, looking up, looking down, looking left and right, just exploring physical movement can be a really big pleasure practices. And then my last pleasure practice, and then my last non-sexual suggestion is boundary setting. And I know that this isn't like overtly connected, but it really is for me, because the communication of boundaries are not so much like an if you do this, I will do X, Y, and Z as a result, but more, I am exerting from myself the things that I need in order to feel and access joy and pleasure in a relationship to somebody else, right? So in that way, boundaries can really be a communication of I'm taking care of myself, because in order to show up the way I want to in whatever relationship we're talking about, whatever context we're talking about, I need these things in order for me to feel cared for and me to access pleasure and joy. Now, some pleasure practices that are sexual, I really like to suggest and support the idea of extended foreplay. So foreplay not being something that just exists for the 5 minutes before we take our clothes off, or maybe the 5 minutes after we take our clothes off, but rather something that starts at the beginning of the day, right? When we're thinking about our partner or partners, and we're sending a spicy text, or we're leaving a note on the fridge and saying, I can't wait to see you later, right? Thinking about foreplay is something we can infuse into our entire existence with a partner, or even on our own, right? You deserve the exact same amount of attention and pleasure you provide to your partners. So whether extended foreplay looks like, okay, before I get in the bed and like pull out the vibrator, I'm actually going to take a bath, or I'm going to do that massage of the lotion into my skin after my shower, or I'm going to sit and look at myself in the mirror, right? Um, and then also variety. So variety can really increase our sexual pleasure practice, using toys, using role plays, using blindfolds, using dirty talk, using breath work, all tools to increase or extend the pleasure we experience both on our own and with other people. And then reevaluating our goals for sex, right? Are we participating in mainly goal-oriented sex? Is the goal to orgasm, or just to get to know each other's bodies and connect more deeply and feel intimate and connected to each other? And what does sex look like without orgasm as the goal? And then, so thinking about all of those things, we're going to do some interesting poetry prompts to kind of integrate those ideas. So before I do that, I'll just share a couple of quotes that really felt very meaningful to me. The first one from Bell Hooks. She says, she wanted me to remember that pleasure is political, for the capacity to relax and play renews the spirit and makes it possible for us to come to the work of writing clearer and ready for the journey. So perhaps that means we integrate some pleasure practices before we come to our computer to write for the day, or before we come to our journal in the evening, right? Getting in touch with our bodies, not just in that centering breath I had you do, but perhaps in some more of that. I'm going to read a poem that Adrienne Maree Brown includes in her book, Pleasure Activism. It's called Sex Magic. No One Told Me to Do It. And this is just kind of an example of a poem that includes concepts and ideas about pleasure and just infuses them into the language and words she uses, and it's quite beautiful. So she says, it was the full moon shining in my window. I waited, a wide sea, moonlight on my thighs, heat on my fingertips. I was a wave, then a million. After, I was trembling, writing on a page everything I needed, everything I had to have, what I couldn't die without, what was in my veins. I reached into myself, covered my fingers with yes, my pleasure, my sea slick, wrote my name onto the page, mine, my pleasure. My life would be my pleasure. I buried this note in my bed, planted it under my tongue, in my sheets, on my temples, everywhere, my pleasure, everywhere, my prayer. So I think that really sets the stage for the writing that we are about to do. So our first prompt is going to, and I know I've said the word free write before in this workshop. And so if you aren't familiar with that concept, it's basically you start writing and you don't pick up your pen from the page. Even if you keep writing, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to write, I don't know what the next line is. That's the strategy for just kind of getting some ideas out, get everything flowing. So don't judge yourself. You can keep any, if all or none of the lines that you write today. But our first prompt is going to be, you'll have 5 minutes, actually maybe a little less, 4 minutes, to answer the question, or not answer the question, but answer the prompt, if my pleasure had hands. So I want you to personify your pleasure as a being with hands, breath, and a voice. What would it reach for? How would it move through a room? What does its touch feel like? Let your pleasure take on a physicality and agency, guiding you through your desires in perhaps an unexpected way. So again, if my pleasure had hands, I would write that at the top of your page, and then I'll give you 4 minutes. Bring you back. Okay, I'm going to bring you back. 4 minutes is over. Just wrap up your final word or sentence. And again, all of these are just starting points for you to continue exploring. We only have an hour together today. So I encourage you to revisit these prompts and your words. Try again, start from the beginning, or keep going with what you find yourself writing right now. I love that. I love that. Okay, so our next prompt, moving swiftly on. I know I mentioned earlier the practice of just looking at yourself in the mirror. Usually as a part of this workshop, which we're not going to have time for today, I encourage you to spend a minute just looking at yourself. We often don't give ourselves the opportunity of witnessing our own bodies in the mirror without the action of doing an activity in relation to that. So I'm putting on my makeup, I am getting dressed for the day, I'm checking my hair before I leave that house. But offering yourself the opportunity to actually just witness what you look like can be such a powerful activity, both in a negative and a positive way. But I encourage you to do that at some point in the next week. Notice what comes up for you. So in that spirit, our next prompt, I'd like to encourage you to write between 5 and 10 lines or longer. If you get there, we're going to have 5 minutes. It's going to be a choose your own adventure moment. So the first option is to my, insert whichever body part you would like to focus on. So that's kind of going to be the like statement you write at the top of the page, to my blank body part. Which place on your body is something that you feel deserves more attention and pleasure than it gets, or is an unexplored section? So to my, whichever body part fits that description for you, 5 minutes. Or the other fun one that I came up with was, if my pussy / penis / insert body part could speak, it would say blank. So we'll have 5 minutes to answer those prompts. I'll put them in the chat and I'll bring you back when it's time. Okay, I'm gonna bring you back. We're reaching almost the end of our time together, so I have one final prompt with you that I really encourage you to spend more time than we're gonna have right now to sit with. But so basically, the last prompt that we are going to do is going to be a longer form list poem. So I'd like to encourage you to eventually have 16 lines at the least, but feel free to have as little or as many as come to you right now. And this is going to be in answer to the prompt, instructions on how to please me. Now, these could be instructions you are giving to yourself. These could be instructions you would then theoretically hand to a partner. I have had people come back after this workshop and say to me, my partner just loved my instructions poem, right? So that can be, it can also be to your sex toy. It could be to your pillows. It could be to your bed. It could be to your shower curtain. It could be to whoever you want it to be. Instructions on how to please me. So I'll give you 5 minutes and then we'll come back together. All right, folks, that is our 5-minute timer. Like I said, these are just the beginnings of what I hope will be longer, more beautiful pieces. This is the messy first draft right now. So don't be hard on yourself if you don't love what you've written so far. But that is going to conclude our writing portion. We have 5 minutes left, and the way that I usually like to spend the last couple of minutes together is I created this kind of handout that comes alongside the work that I do in this workshop, and I'm going to share it in the chat. I guess I'll actually just share my screen and show it to you first. Let me see how to do that really quickly. But basically it is an offering of some of the things you can kind of take from this workshop and go and do some further research about. So I will share my screen with you. Okay, can I just have somebody say to me that they can see my screen? Okay, I'm getting nods. Okay, great. All right, so this is my little handout. I'll drop it in the chat when I'm done showing it to you. But basically, I have these little affirmations. I'm gonna read them out loud to you. I think it's so powerful to use your own words to remind yourself of all of these things. So I want to just offer them. And so feel free to say them to yourself as I say them to you, to join me in saying them, to unmute or to keep yourself muted or to write them down or to do any of the above or none. But the first one is, I deserve pleasure. I am present in my body. My body deserves to feel good, and I am capable of joy. So if any of those felt like affirmations to kind of take from this workshop, I would love to offer those to you. And then I put together a list of my kind of sex ed and pleasure reading, watching, and following recommendations. So like I mentioned at the beginning, I run an organization called Pleasure is for, okay, I'm gonna stop doing this now. Sorry. I run an organization because I want to see your faces. An organization called Pleasure is for People. So I'll share the website with you and you can learn more about the work that I do there. I also wanted to offer that as part of the work that I do, I am connected with a sex toy company that I really love, and they I have a 50% off discount code for Valentine's Day to share with you as my little gift to you. If you are interested in gifting yourself or someone else in your life, Bellesa is the company that I work with, and you will you can go and get yourself a fun new toy. They're great, really high quality, and they are I'm gonna drop all of these things in the chat as I say them out loud. So that is the sex toy website, and then this is my discount code. Okay, and then this is my website. And then I so wish that we could hear each other's pieces today. But I know we don't have time for that. So if you feel like you want me to hear it or see it or read it, please feel free to email it to me. My email is on my website. I would love, love, love to hear the work that you created today, especially if you go on to making it bigger. And then I'm going to drop this. This is the little handout that I have for all of you. And with the 0 minutes we have left, I guess just 1 minute, if that's okay, Julian, for any questions that anybody has, any burning questions or any reflections. I know I really didn't get to hear your voices very much today, but I hope that this was really a space and time for you to center yourselves and your pleasure right before Valentine's Day. And yeah, it's been such a gift to spend the last hour with you. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to field them, but I'm seeing some things in the chat. Just some thanks everyone. So much gratitude to all of you, especially during unprecedented these times. But yes. Okay, I guess no questions. Julian, off to you.
So thank you so much, Amir. That was such an educational and a joyful workshop. I can tell everyone got a lot out of it. I'm going to share some links in the chat that you can check out. There's a feedback survey at the top, so you could let Amir know what a great job she did and let us know what you want to see in the future from these types of sessions. There's a link to spring classes. It's exactly what it sounds like. We've also got a new program with a pair of highly subsidized classes. That means less expensive. That's where it says new program, bluestoop.org/power. Upcoming events, more sessions like this one, our Wednesday drop-in writing sessions, our newsletter, which is the best way to stay on top of all of these many things I'm listing out to you. And of course, our donation page if you want to support helping us run these programs and compensate our community members. We really appreciate the help. So I'm going to let you take a moment to check those out and enjoy the rest of your day.